get to a little bit of that hideous strength, because as you said before the show started, it gets awesome kind of quickly.
Yes,
and in a way that I was not expecting at all. So, Walter, do you want to summarize even just
Yeah, neither of us have read this book. The only reason we chose it is because it has been urged on me endlessly, and then I urged it on Matt, and he yielded. And it starts a little slow. It starts with academic politics over the sale of some land by a sort of second-rate British college, a university, Bracton University, and they have to sell some land off because they're in dire straits financially, but also because this strange, like Manhattan Project times 10 scientific think tank wants to buy the land and establish its headquarters there. And so we get a lot of, senior common room, British academic political drama over the sale of this land. But once this man named Mark goes to work for NICE, I forget what it stands for, the something, something Center for Experimental something. And you're to understand it as a multifactorial
National Institute of Coordinated Experiments.
Right. So basically, it's the Center for Technocracy. And remember, this is a story that was written in 1943 and published in 45. So what C.S. Lewis is saying is that there's going to be this new institution, and once we start moving inside the institution through the eyes of the worm who wants to be powerful, in the same way that Winston Smith in 1984 is kind of an everyman, we do have an everyman at the center of this story, except he's a butt kisser who wants nothing more than to be on the inside. And you start to realize he's morally and ethically super flexible. And once we start to realize what this NICE is doing, it resembles nothing more than like the World Economic Foundation,
exactly,
crossed with Bill Gates, crossed with USAID, crossed with Google, crossed with the military-industrial complex. This group has basically secretly, and in a way that reminds at least one character of the Nazis. One character says at a certain point, it's like we lost the war. In other words, between eugenics, weapons manufacture, and so on, you realize this is the new way. I mean, they even outline a kind of depopulation program, which is
sterilization,
mass sterilization. At some point, somebody says there are too many organisms on Earth besides humans, and we have to eliminate them. We kind of got to turn the world into a laboratory and sterilize it for this mass experiment. And you realize this utopian experiment of all these, competing sciences is a lot like the way they talked during COVID. Fauci, I am the science. Don't you trust science? This is the same rhetoric that this group is using. And very quickly, it starts to do things like it stages a riot against itself, knowing that the people, in other words, knowing that the people are going to be suspicious of NICE, it actually mounts a riot against itself. And it has this worm named Mark write up a story about the riot the night before it happens. and Mark has this, residual ethical side that says, how can we do this? How can we write the story of the outburst before it happens? And the weird leader of NICE is this woman they call the Fairy. And she's a cigar smoking, rather masculine woman who has this private police force that she wants to launch. they're into surveillance, they're into fake news, they're into information control. And she says, since when do you have to wait for a story to happen to write about it?
Yeah.
To write about it. And you start to go, oh my gosh, if C.S. Lewis were alive today, he would be thought of as, out kooking Alex Jones. I mean, he lays down the template for how a group like this will manipulate public opinion in the service of. I just saw The Naked Gun last night, okay? And in the new Naked Gun, the villain is a group that wants to depopulate first what they want to do is make everybody's cell phone send a signal that will cause them to go atavistically crazy, cause disorder, so that then this corporate scientific technocratic regime can come in and recreate order. And that's,
God, they did that?
That's the villain in the Naked Gun. Yep.
Oh.
But as I say, the prophetic quality of this is chilling. I mean, it may as well be Klaus Schwab or Anthony Fauci or whatever, Bill Gates.
So there is so much description of how the bureaucracy works that feels like 1,000% on the money to what people might be saying behind the scenes about these mass bureaucracies that we have, these technocracies that we've described on the outside, whether it's the anti-disinformation bureaucracy, the health bureaucracy, whatever it is, the sort of technocratic insiders, it sounds like what they would say about their own operation. And just to give an example of some of the things that they say they're going to do, here's some of their programs. What sort of thing do you have in mind? Quite simple and obvious things at first. Sterilization of the unfit, liquidation of backward races. We don't want any dead weights. Selective breeding, then real education, including prenatal education. By real education, I mean one that has a take it or leave it, that has no take it or leave it nonsense. A real education makes the patient what it wants infallibly, whatever he or his parents try to do about it. Of course, it'll have to be mainly psychological at first. And then they start talking about like the size of the bureaucracy and how exciting that is. And there'll be 15 subdirectors and hang on a second. There'll be 40 interlocking committees sitting every day, and they've got a wonderful gadget. I was shown the model last time I was in town, by which the findings of each committee print themselves off in their own little compartment on the analytical notice board every half hour. Then that report slides itself into the right position where it's connected up by little arrows with all the relevant parts of the other reports. It's like this gigantic machine that never stops.
They call it the
pragmatometer. Yeah.
Pragmatometer. It may as well be called ChatGPT.
Exactly.
Yep. But one thing that 1984 doesn't do that this book does is show the slow corruption of the hero. You see, in 1984, Winston Smith holds out until the very end, until the rats are unleashed on his eyeballs. But Mark, in this book, about a quarter of the way through, starts to love the bomb. And we get insight into how you are seduced. So his first assignment, as I say, is to write about a riot that NICE is going to stage against itself so that it can then give itself police powers, otherwise known as a false flag, right? NICE is going to run a false flag against itself, and Mark is going to write the story that is sympathetic to the need for a new police force even before the riot takes place, so that the story can be out instantly. And this is a paragraph about Mark's corruption that I think is beautiful. This was the first thing Mark had been asked to do, which he himself, before he did it, clearly knew to be criminal. But the moment of his consent almost escaped his notice. For him, it all slipped past in a chatter of laughter, of that intimate laughter between fellow professionals, which of all earthly powers is strongest to make men do very bad things before they are as yet individually very bad men.
Wow. That is chilling, right?
Yeah. He's basically saying, you laughing at the expense of the little people with your professional friends in your, secret chambers is the moment when the devil has you by the, soles of your feet.
And we know that that's what Lewis is referring to, because he was very interested in that topic, right?
Right. And that's what's unique about this book, by the way. In the annals of dystopian literature, it has a frankly otherworldly, supernatural subplot. Because while Mark is being corrupted in this technocratic way that doesn't seem yet to have to do with the real devil, but will, his wife is being taken up by a kind of group of rebels who are trying to hold the line against the AI or the evil technocracy, because his wife is some kind of seer who's having dreams that predict events.
It's kind of PKD, actually.
Yeah, it's like well, PKD became a Christian at the end, but it's a more orthodox Christian form of PKD, as I say, what I find startling and unnerving about it, and I really was unnerved by this portion of it, is the extent to which Lewis, who is an Oxford Don, remember, he's a friend of Tolkien, he's a friend of what they call the Inklings, this group of British academics. I think he knew from his colleagues at the end of World War II that the age of technocracy was upon us. And the characters who, these what we might call tech bros, who are going to, or science freaks who are going to lead this, were probably already present among his cohort. In other words, he was seeing within the university this movement of this fissure between the humanists and the technocrats.
Yep. Yeah, for those who are asking, this is the book, That Hideous Strength by C.S. Lewis. So let's just leave it up there for a second.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're right. He's describing what he must have been observing, how all this was galvanizing. Because remember, it's still during the war, so there was a tremendous amount of sort of gung-ho can-do enthusiasm about the power of great minds getting together. I mean, think about the Imitation Game, right? It's the collective ability of smart people getting together, overcoming or reaching a great task together. There was a lot of that in the air at the time. In the United States, we had the Manhattan Project, and there was a similar kind of thing that happened, but it wasn't academic in the same way. Maybe, I don't know. But either way, the conceit of this novel is really interesting because it asks Mark to come in, and his role is going to be to chronicle it, right? And he immediately questions, well, why would you want me to write about something this? They say, you don't mean you want me to write up all of this? And they say, no, we want you to write it down to camouflage it. Only for the present, of course. Once the thing gets going, we shan't have to bother about the great heart of the British public anymore. So does that sound familiar? It sure does, right? Like this whole idea of like a mountain of propaganda, with the idea that we eventually can take the training wheels off and people will just not think the forbidden thoughts anymore. We'll build resistance, right? That's the DHS concept. It's the same thing as this, isn't it?
Lewis identifies the entry point for corruption into Mark and maybe into humanity in general as the desire to be included in exclusive groups, to be a member of the elite. And at some point, Mark, who's very concerned about money, he and his wife don't have much money. And when he gets brought into Nice. He's very concerned that he have a job and a salary. And at some point, somebody takes him aside and says, listen, once we get going, you're not going to have to worry about money.
Yeah, right, exactly.
And he says, why? And they said, because we will create the money.
Right.
You know, you are joining the power structure. You're joining what the QAnon people call the cabal, or, you know, and you're not going to have to worry about material things. We are going to take mankind and form it into a new species, basically.
A new thing, yeah.
And a new thing. And what's interesting is that they cast the utopian project as a religious project. They say Jesus was really speaking metaphorically about going to heaven, or, you know, about transfiguring himself or having eternal life. That was really code for physical immortality achieved through science. That was really code for a new social organization, and the stamping out of disease and everything. And so the mock religiosity of this scientific project is, you know, for Lewis, a big deal because he's an Orthodox Christian, but I think is also one of the insights that Orwell lacked. Orwell, you know, was trying to write a version of Soviet communism, basically, or Hitlerian and German fascism. But Lewis is seeing past that and seeing that utopian schemes are ultimately religious schemes that aren't truly about economic betterment or the working class or the Volk, as Hitler would have had it, but they're about triumphing over the human condition itself.
Right. And this is what we've been talking about. You know, we started talking about a couple of weeks ago. Once this thing gets going, we won't have to worry about checking facts anymore, or doing all these things that we used to have to worry about, or convincing audiences, because we will be the audience. Like we'll tell them what they care about. We'll have created their sets of demands, and the only audience that will matter is our own assessing machine. One
detail. When Mark is asked to write the story about the riot, and the story is really going to be an editorial about why Nice needs its own police, he's given the assignment to write two versions. One is the Atlantic version, and one is the tabloid.
Right.
And one is the tabloid version, in which he's sort of plain spoken. And he, you know, and in the second version, he says, he's talking about the enemies of Nice. They may be so-called religious people. They may be financial interests. They may be the old cobweb spinning professors and philosophers of Edstow University itself. They may be Jews. They may be lawyers. I don't care who they are. But I have one thing to tell them. Take care. The people of England are not going to stand this. And then he calls later Nice. Tell him from me that Nice is the boxing glove on democracy's fist. And if he doesn't like it, he'd best get out of the way. And boy, does that sound like this new tough talking manner of both parties in politics, you know.
Right.
Now that Gavin, even, you know, mincing Gavin Newsom is like a, you know, street brawler, you know, you tell him from Gavin. And
I know.
You know, in his version of Trump. And really, you don't have to have lived for the last 75, 80 years to feel like this is up to the minute. You know, we're the boxing glove on democracy's fist. I'm sorry.
I mean, that could have been an Atlantic headline, even.
Or Joe Biden, I'm the boxing glove on democracy's fist, you know?
Right. Yeah, that could have been a
Donald Trump.
Point. Yeah, although they use different language, yes, I would say.
Yeah, they don't say democracy a lot.
But the language that's used in this book is very much the rules-based international order pro-democracy group. I mean, it's chilling how close it is, and that's why when you read it, it's almost like you get the same kind of rush that I got with the Twitter files. Like, oh my God, this is what they really sound like behind the scenes.
Right.
And it's that same kind of thing with this.
Great point, Matt. In 1984, there is one problem, another one. We don't get enough insight into what the upper echelon of the party is doing. We only see this one representative, O'Brien, but this brings you backstage into the conspiracy. And that is really kind of exhilarating, because C.S. Lewis was a smart guy who knew how smart, upper class, elitist British people acted behind the scenes. And at one point, he talks about how the common room, which is where the faculty gather at this university, has been a civilized place for discussion for the last 300 years. And you suddenly realize that the age of European institutions is such that people who think they're special have been thinking they're special in the same buildings for hundreds and hundreds of years. That's what conspiracies really are. They are institutions that go back among people by those who find themselves rather superior.
That's right. That's right. Exactly. Anyway, folks, if you haven't gotten through it, it becomes a very easy read really quickly in this book. So highly recommend it. We'll keep talking about it later this week. To end the segment, we do have the letter that Grok sent us doing the analysis of the asswipe list. So if we could see that, can we get it into better relief or blow it up maybe in size? I can't read that. Let's see. What does it say? Profile impressions. Let's go up a little bit. Okay, never mind. Down now, below profile impressions. Okay, this looks like a casual household shopping list written quickly and informally. Some possible profile: practical shopper. Items like trash bags, toilet paper, wipes, and bleach indicate standard household. Something has a sweet tooth or kids. I didn't pick up on that. Ice cream and s'mores cereal point to treats or meth, frankly. Appearance conscious. See, this is this Grok hasn't been out in the street enough. Appearance conscious. Bleach blonde suggests hair dye, pointing to someone who colors their hair. Younger or humorous personality. What do you think, Walter?
Writing asswipe? I never thought of that as the person being, facetious.
Oh, it's ChatGPT. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Right. I thought that's just what they call it in their family. I was like peering into a little bit of a coarser culture in which, make sure to get asswipe. I don't think that's the one joke they cracked in the shopping list. Possibly a female household member. Hair dye leans that way, though not exclusively. Oh, ChatGPT. Likely living in a family setting. That's depressing.
Yeah, or a burned out apartment full of addicts on an old couch, right?
Right.
With cigarette stains.
First of all, look.
Let's see what Grok says. Okay, based solely on the list, it's difficult to determine a specific profile with certainty, as the items appear to be a mix of misspelled or unusual. You can make it smaller. Misspelled or unusual grocery items. Something. Oh, no, I can't read that. Anyway, it's all right. We're good.
This is at least as good analysis as John Brennan did of the Russiagate evidence.
Right. That's true.
Here, I will say that my first impression was that neither of these were right. When I first picked it up, I went, this is a person who lives by themselves, takes drugs, eats incredibly unhealthy, and maybe is a criminal who needs to dye their hair.
Right. That's what the person who said it's a recent prison escapee.
Right.
But maybe we're bringing our own biases forward a little bit here, Walter.
Well, and thank God we are, because that's our edge on the AI, is that we have experience on Earth and it doesn't. That this is a family setting. I guess the one thing that would argue for that is that it's just like get ice cream. It
Yeah,
makes
get
you,
ice cream, but that's also what you want to get when you've taken so many drugs that your teeth fall out,
right, right.
you know? But
I think
the s'mores threw me a little bit because that's not a traditional addict snack, I don't think. Well, the
right.
s'mores cereal, but no, yes, it would be because it's yeah.
And you know what's troubling about the ass wipes part? It suggests because it's first on the list that they haven't had them for a while, that they've been making do with something. Like, you know, ripped up paper bags.
Yeah, like in Russia, little pieces of newspaper, right? Neatly cut with scissors.
Right.
Yeah, that's what.
That it's that big a priority suggests they've been doing without.
Can we get somebody to go on an AI and maybe for the next show send us what the brand name ass wipe would look like on like instead of Charmin? I think that would be a great looking thing. We got to get somebody to do that. So, all right, that was really funny. We got to treasure that list and keep it close. And thanks everybody for tuning in. And we will see you again later this week.